Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. I guess for people who haven't seen Grand Theft Hamlet yet, what can they expect when they see your film?
It's
It's
a
kind
new
of,
kind of film.
I guess it's on like it does what it says on the tin, like the title, Grand Theft Hamlet. Like it's Grand Theft Auto meets Hamlet, and the whole thing goes crazy.
But one thing to point out is it's not a document. It's a documentary about us trying to put on Hamlet. It's not
Yeah,
a document. It's not a film of Hamlet.
no, it's about
It's
us.
it's
Yeah,
about our journey inside the game as avatars. When we do auditions in the
so the
game.
whole film is made inside the game.
Yeah. Auditions in the game, rehearsals in the game, but there's also a lot in there about our private journeys, our own struggles with the pandemic, with loneliness, with all the kinds of things that were happening at the time to everybody.
Because I guess it does, probably sounds like a crazy thing to attempt, which it was. So it's like, how did we do that? Why did we do that? What were we going through at the time? And do we manage to do it?
Do we or
You have
don't
to
we?
come and see the
You have
film
to
and
watch
find
the
out.
film.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, I've never played Grand Theft
All
Auto.
right.
I'm not a gamer. So even just sort of reading the synopsis, didn't know if it was going to be my kind of film, whether I'd sort of be able to, get beyond the medium and the setting. And I guess any of that cynicism was just very quickly dispelled. I guess it's like when you're watching an animation or you're listening to a podcast, it's quickly your brain adapts, I think, to the medium that's in front of you. And so many unexpected, hilarious moments, so many poignant moments. And I guess because it is kind of a new concept for a film, you never really know where it's going to go. I mean, obviously, we do sort of see the idea develop kind of in real time, but at what exact moment did you know you were going to make it into the film that we see today?
I guess so. Sam started doing like a few experiments with Mark, where I think you see the scene at the beginning of the film where they do the opening of Hamlet. And so he was recording his footage, and he also recorded of them discovering the theatre and all that kind of thing. It was like at that point that I was watching these, and I just thought it was hilarious. And as a filmmaker, I was absolutely itching to kind of get in there and make it pretty, make it sort of more like do some interviews with people, do some like use the in-game phone and do some close-ups of the avatars and get that sort of intimacy and emotion into the film. Because there was actually a lot of really interesting stories going on that weren't just about them trying to put on a Hamlet, but were also about the people we met,
But I think we were kind
community
of
that we were in.
discovering it all as we went on,
Yeah.
like in terms of like how we were going to put on this production and how we were going to make the film. That was all stuff because it's all new to us. It's new to anyone.
We were making it up as we went along
So
on
we kind
every
of
level.
discovered ways of doing it as we went along, didn't we?
You did, yeah. And it was a bit like it felt a bit overwhelming at one point where you were just about to do the actual production of the play, and I was sort of making a documentary about it. But you were also my co-director, but you kind of had to sort of not think about the film too much and just
At that point, no, yeah, because
do the production, and then you afterwards you could come back and we could reflect on what we've actually done, and make a film about it.
Did you, from the outset, know that it was going to work, showing the whole thing from within the game? Because I guess maybe people don't associate sort of the beautiful side of it. People think of the sort of the death and the destruction and the violence, but actually the setting itself is very beautifully made.
I think, that's something that I very from when I first started playing the game, I was so struck by how beautiful it was. And so I always thought, we've got to kind of get that across and, reflect that side that anyone who actually plays that game knows. And I think there's a notoriety to the game that if you haven't played it before, you think, okay, it's just a violent space for teenage boys.
And nicking cars.
About nicking cars. And obviously that's part of it, but anyone who's played the game will also know how beautiful it is and that you can like experience these incredible digital sunsets in there, and there's beautiful scenery.
But it's funny because I'd never played the game. I was like you. I was like, I didn't know anything about gaming at all. And so when I jumped into the game as an avatar, I realized like, oh my God, I'm actually having a lot of fun. Like it's really fun stealing cars. But it's also, I went off on my own and did sort of almost like nature documentary. Like I went off and like started filming, different things that I could find, those beautiful kind of landscapes, and the way the light changes in there is incredible. And also the NPCs, the non-playable characters, which you see quite a lot of in the film. These kinds of, they're not the players, they are sort of these people that are just populating that digital landscape, and you can discover them, and they mutter to each other and they talk, and you can interact with them, and you can sort of, they're mostly scared and terrified of you and run away, but there's also some really interesting, just they kind of became in a way sort of a mirror to the story that we were telling. They were watching us as we were having conversations, and I think I used that as a sort of narrative device within the film very much. Yeah,
I love it when you come in, because actually that I sort of felt like you were my way in to the world, because being someone who hadn't played it before, and when you're like figuring out, how do I create my avatar and what happens here and what happens there. So I think that's also a really good sort of bridge for people who perhaps haven't played the game. But maybe also, this is kind of a stupid question. How are you actually filming it? Like, what's the mechanism? Is it just literally filming everything that you're doing in the game? Is there other ways of kind of shooting within that? And then, how did you sift through, I guess, the hours and hours of footage that you must have had by the end?
Well, I mean, Sam did a lot of kind of like trials and error, trying to kind of find the best way of recording the footage so that it was the best possible quality. There was also just the thing of how to record our voices and multiple voices to the highest quality we could. Sometimes we couldn't because, for various reasons. But yeah, we did record. Basically, it's like how anything that you watch on YouTube of people playing games, they record their screen. They would have a sort of capture card which allows them to capture everything. But of course, in terms of physically creating the shots, you can either have your own viewpoint as a player, you can have yourself as an avatar at various
like third person or first person, yeah.
Or you can use the in-game phone, which has a camera
when
on
you
it.
discovered that was a big kind of step change, really, because that allowed you to
do close-ups
and get still shots as well. Because the thing is, when you're anyone who's seen like gaming footage online, you'll notice it's always moving because he's following your character, so it's kind of quite intense and hectic. And we discovered that you've got this phone and you can get these beautiful still shots. Suddenly, like, you've got a tripod and you can zoom in and you can pan and you
can have a cinematic language, which that was a kind of game changer for me, because I thought, actually now I can actually make a film that's going to be, you can perceive in the cinema, that maybe anyone under the age of 15 could probably tolerate 90 minutes of like game feed. I'm not sure that most people could, you know what I mean? So I wanted to create that like sort of contemplative.
But it's all created like within the gameplay. That's still you in the game. We're not like, there's no modding involved here to kind of, there's no kind of special filmmaking setup. This is all and what you can do as a player in the game.
Anyone could do it, basically. And people do make films in the games.
I guess the other aspect of it is, for you, Sam, it's as much kind of about your friendship as well with Mark, and on both sides of that, kind of the banter that's going between the two of you, and you're just kind of chatting away to each other, and then you do also share these really sort of poignant moments. I mean, like, I guess a lot of people when they watch it are going to take themselves back to lockdown. Well, how did I feel at that moment, and what was I doing actually if I wasn't playing a video game? Maybe there was something else I was immersing myself in. And even when he brings up that his last living relative had just passed away, these are really sort of gut-wrenching things to think about. So what was it like for you, I guess, going on that journey with your friend, but through this very specific medium?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny kind of looking back on it now, like talking to Mark about it. When we look back on it, we're like, yeah, we were really going through something at the time. You kind of think, yeah, we got through it, no problem. But like everyone, actually, if you think back to how you experienced that moment in history, it's quite traumatic for lots of people. And I think, in some ways, the fact that we were able to kind of keep connected through this medium and kind of.
And you had a project.
We had a project to some kind of to be creative and to kind of like work on something together, and not just us, but build this whole community around us. That was really special.
I mean, we were really worried about Mark actually at one point, and genuinely so. And like, you know, when the pubs opened, we were like, shall we just go for a drink? You know, maybe you should go for a drink with him, you know. But actually, I mean, he has since reflected that was sort of like that whole project sort of saved him, really. And I think that it saved us all. It really did. And, you know.
Yeah, I just think the fact that we were able to, you know, all us three come together and work on something and build up this other community around us as well, who were also, you know, integrally involved in it. It was
very moving the way people just kept on turning up to rehearsals, you know.
Yeah, and kind of wanted to be part of it, part of this sort of weird, crazy thing we were trying to do.
Sort of really made me reflect on this concept of, you know, being really immersed in something and kind of how you can have these multiple identities where it's almost, if you play a game enough, maybe your identity within the game becomes more real than the one outside of it. But then at some point, you know, you do have to face reality like we all did when lockdown finally lifted and we had to do sort of a recalibration. So I think the film sort of very nicely looks at lots of those sorts of themes in a kind of indirect way. Have you found that reaction when people have watched it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely something about that kind of blurring of realities that we, you know, kind of went through when you're kind of, you do get really immersed. And there's a reality to that world, that kind of, and the relationships you have in there, that I think are very important, you know, and you can't just dismiss them as unreal. I think there's definitely something very important there.
And it's always very touching. You know, I looked for moments in the film that were kind of where, you know, people come in as essentially fancy dress or dressed as puppets, don't they? Sort of, you know, and then so a lot of avatars you encounter don't have a microphone on, and it's very difficult to get a sense of who they are or where they live or where they're from. And so when people would share things with us that were quite personal, it was really quite touching, you know, like this guy who is a delivery driver had broken his leg, you know, woke up in hospital, and, you know, we were thinking about what does to be or not to be mean. And he was like, I don't think I can talk about this right now. And it was like, you know, this is the thing. These are real people behind the avatars, and they're living their lives, and they're struggling to kind of make ends meet, or they're struggling with their identity, or, you know, it's very interesting that when those things come through.
And I think you're right, is that people watching it now, like, they may not have been playing that particular video game or any video game, but a lot of people were going through something at that time, found some way of getting through it. And I think that it resonates with a lot of people now.
We had this alien turn up to audition, and he was Finnish Tunisian, and then he gave us I won't spoil it, but obviously, he kind of
it's a special moment anyway.
He offered us something that was even better than Shakespeare, and it was a beautiful moment, you know, of exchange.
And you were mentioning a moment ago, you know, even those words, to be or not to be. What I love about the fact that the words of the play itself, and the more that, you know, like when you're practicing the monologue and like repeating those words, you know, even for people that, you know, aren't even that familiar with Shakespeare, they sort of take on a new meaning, and sort of the film kind of goes into this slightly existential, philosophical place, you know, and if you sort of take it to its darker corners, you know, sort of feeling quite like, oh, you know, do I even exist if I'm in lockdown and I'm not seeing my friends and I'm not doing my job? So when you watch it back now, do you also feel like, gosh, it really does have this other layer to it too?
Yeah, I mean, definitely at that moment, that was me kind of discovering something about the play and that ridiculously famous speech, and sort of trying to get underneath it and discovering its meaning through my experience of being in the game, which is extraordinary. You think about it, like to think that this game that is kind of a rendition of Los Angeles, contemporary Los Angeles, but it's somehow teaching me about the 16th century writings by Shakespeare, which itself was about a kind of medieval Denmark. And like, so it's like these weird kind of lenses and layers of reality that kind of all kind of merging together to kind of give us some understanding we were going through at that particular moment in time.
And also Hamlet, for me, is very much about people pretending to be something they're not. Hamlet doesn't really know if he knows his family anymore. He's just discovered this massive thing, and he's trying to interrogate his own, his reality, his very reality of what he's living, and people wearing masks, and the play within the play being the thing that catches the conscience of the king, and all this kind of thing. Those things really worked well in a digital space where people were dressed up as avatars, and you couldn't tell who they were or what their motivations were, or if they were going to kill you at any moment. And so I learned things about the play through putting it in this brand new space.
And it also, in that sense, can kind of become a bit of a meditation on art itself. Maybe you sort of feel like Shakespeare, is this sort of high, inaccessible art form. And obviously like game playing perhaps is something that is more sort of common denominator. But here you're completely bringing them together and then saying actually everybody can participate in this kind of art, which is something we shouldn't lose, like you said, a Fatima, the ballet dancer, becoming a programmer, we should hang on to this artistic sphere.
Well, Shakespeare at the time, in his original incarnation, was very much popular entertainment. It was not considered high art at all. It was like you went, to the Globe or whatever and paid hardly any money and like wandered around and
probably got a prostitute
and threw tomatoes at the actors if you didn't like it, and wandered in and out. There was no reverence to it, so we kind of wanted to, I think,
recreate that, and
this is a perfect example of how you can still see Shakespeare in that way. And like, maybe that's how video games are now. It's like mass entertainment for anyone.
It's a lack of reverence, which we thought was very funny,
Yeah, and also I think that's the way we should approach Shakespeare. You shouldn't revere him as like the greatest.
He's pretty good.
It's great, but it doesn't help. I don't think it's like it's not helpful to think of it, put it on a pedestal.
Yeah, but the high art is you made a very good point about the high art and the low art. It makes you reflect on which is which in a way.
Because you look at a game like GTA and lots of other games like that, and the kind of artistry and sophistication that goes into them is mind-blowing,
and
really.
And the satire, it's very satirical, actually, the game. A lot of people don't realise that. They think it's just, teenage boys going around stealing cars. But actually, there's a lot of jokes in the game about American culture and about, it's I don't know, I certainly learned that, but I didn't know that before about the game, so.
And in your sort of making of it, or when you watch it back now, do you have sort of favorite moments? I mean, the fact, even when you're just trying to like do the play, people are dying and you're trying to like interact with someone and then they just shoot you. So there's quite funny moments, but then also very poignant ones, even for your relationship when, sort of like, well, hang on, you didn't actually remember my birthday. You're so obsessed now with this game, at what cost is this project coming at? So, what were maybe some of the highlights, but also the challenging moments for you as filmmakers?
I mean, Half-Ted, which, if you
finished Tunisian Alien,
when you see the film, everyone will get that. Like, he's definitely, any moment he's in it is a kind of favorite moment, really.
Yeah, he's like a court jester, actually. Sort of like,
there's like moments like in the play where it's like a really serious moment and I'm doing this very serious bit, and then you see him in the background doing this gyrating, and it's because again it completely undercuts it and is so inappropriate, but it's amazing.
That is probably one of the favorite moments. But I think I'm trying to think of any of the other favorite moments. I mean, I think definitely like there was an ecstatic moment when we decided we were going to do a bit of the play on top of a blimp, and then we were going to rise above the clouds, and there was all this problems of people falling off, and what were we going to do about that, But it was like, I mean, it was one of the actors who says it's like if Elon Musk put on a production of Hamlet in Los Angeles on $1 billion budget, this is what this is what we probably can.
But that's true. When we got on that blimp and like rose up above, and then you get to the kind of this highest point, and then you can see like the curve of the earth below you. That was like pretty miraculous, wasn't it? And you were thinking, we're going to do a scene on this blimp here, and hope that people don't fall off and die.
It was okay because we had a flying car where people used a helicopter, so we picked people up. It was like, well, BT Raiders did anyway.
And in terms of the takeaways from the film, I mean, there's just so much to unpack, isn't there? It's kind of this time capsule of this moment we all lived through. So I think a lot of people can kind of reflect on it in that way and their own personal experiences. But, you know, as we said as well, it's also experimenting with documentary form, with filmmaking form. And, you know, I guess these technologies, whether people sort of revere them or look down on them, you know, there is limitless possibilities within there. You know, it's whatever you want to use that technology for is at your fingertips. So what do you hope people take away from watching your movie?
I just hope people go, like, basically have their mind opened. And I'm so happy that you said that you did, and that you hadn't played games before, and that you would, you know, that you found a way in through my character. And I think that there is a possibility to find a way into this film in different ways. And I just think that it'd be great to go in, when you go and watch the film, go in with an open mind, go in with curiosity, but most importantly, expect, I think, to have a good time, because we did want it to be just to reflect the joy and the fun that we had when we did this. So,
and seeing the response that it's had. I mean, I guess, you know, just audiences themselves, but also, you know, awards, so many different film festivals, you know, including BFI London Film Festival. What has that meant to you?
It's enormous, because
it's
this is a film that we made in our bedroom, essentially, on a PlayStation. So we didn't ever, in our wildest dreams, think that we would be nominated for like 4 BEFAs, and that we would be at London Film Festival
at the IMAX. We did screening at the IMAX. It was sold out. Like, amazing. And the response, and you can. That's the amazing thing about this, I think, is that it is a film about community and about kind of coming together to make something, to do a creative project, and that you get that experience when you come and see this film in a cinema, because it's like a group of people coming together. And there's like moments you can hear when the audience respond, like laughing and clapping and applauding. And it's such a, that's been like the biggest thing to me. I would
definitely say to an audience, if they can get to see it in the cinema, try, because it does open in cinemas on the 6th of December, and it's only got a very short run, but it is going to be worth it. Go with some friends, because it is quite a fun thing to watch with friends. And also get, you know, maybe gather up a few mixture of friends, maybe some gamer friends, maybe some friends who like Shakespeare, and just see where that. I'd like to be in the room when they have conversation with each other about what, you know what I mean. I think that's
it's definitely a fun trip, I think.
What is next for you guys? Is this something you're going to experiment with further? Are you going to do something completely different? What's next?
I mean, we're both developing a lot of different projects. You're thinking about doing a hybrid in-game and real-life performance theatre piece, which is very exciting. I'm developing a few films. One of which is actually just a real-life fiction film, which is about sign language and comedy. And then we're also doing some stuff together. Yeah,
we definitely want to kind of explore more about filmmaking inside game spaces, and that kind of hybrid thing that can be in game spaces and in real life as well.
Yeah, so there's more stories to be told, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Congratulations on making this incredible film, and I can't wait for everyone else to see it in cinemas. Thanks a lot.